For quite a few months now, I've really wanted to make myself a filing cabinet, but then I thought, why not just create some plywood boxes with a suspension file system inside it, and I could just discreetly hide them in a bookcase. And that's what I've done. I've made 2 of them and some ordinary boxes for general cables, camera lenses and bits like that. So if you want to see how I made them, then keep on watching. So to make my boxes, I'm using 12mm softwood plywood, and I'd asked my local hardware store to cut them down to strips so they'd slot in my bookcase. And right now I'm measuring and marking the side panels minus 2 12mm put together, which would be the front and the back. But because it was chucking it down, I had to put a makeshift dust collector on my circular saw, although I highly recommend putting a sheet down as well. I did that a bit too late. So something that I like to do with all my cuts is mark what is the top and the bottom and which is the good side to be facing out. And to work out the size I'd need for the front and the back, I propped the 2 side panels against 2 boxes and blue tacked 2 rebate offcuts that I created with a router. Just to help you along, I'm going to skip forward a little bit, just so you know this is the router bit that I used, which I'd cut a profile on a large offcut and then trimmed it down. But I initially did a dummy run just so I could see if it worked, and then blue tacked them onto the side panels. And this is a full scap filing system. They might be all different shapes and sizes, so definitely put yours into place, and then you can measure what length pieces you need for your front and back. So more cuts as normal. I know, I really need to take the time to make a fence for my circular saw again. Then I needed to work on the handles, and I set a combination square to 5 centimetres and drew a pencil line along the top. 18 centimetres from either side, note from me. So those new marks were exactly where I put my 32mm hole saw, but halfway through I flipped it over and continued to prevent damage. And once I'd cut those out, I drew 2 straight lines along the top and the bottom of it, and then carefully cut out with a jigsaw. And I was just going to have the 1 handle for the front, but I thought, why not just go for 2? It'll be easier to carry if it gets heavier and heavier over time. So we're finally going to work on the rebate, which is going to be the track for my foolscap files. Now if you can get hold of one of these with a bearing at the bottom, then it's so much easier for you. But to save me a tenner, I used this piece instead from my favourite kit and set up a fence. And I'm cutting along the edge of a larger offcut from my garage. You never know when these things come in handy. And then using my circular saw and setting up another fence, I trimmed it down to about 3 centimetres, giving me enough space so I could nail it to the side of my panels. And thankfully it stopped raining by this point. And then before trimming down my rail, I drew a line 5 centimetres from the top, and that would be where my track sits. And this allowed room for my foolscap labels, so you might need to set yours a little bit lower just in case yours are taller. And then I held the track against it, marked exactly the same width of the side panel and cut it down with a jigsaw. So obviously I made 2 per box. Now to glue the track to the sides, I ran glue along the slimmest section because that's the bit that's going to be stuck to the box. And after gluing and setting exactly where I wanted it, I clamped it, flipped it over, clamped again, and then made it even stronger with a nail gun using 25mm nails. Then for a dry lay, this is always a good idea just to test to see if things work. Yeah, it's a little bit wrong. They weren't running as smoothly as I wanted them to. I could have route that end. Takes off. I know exactly. And that's because there was a bit of an angle on the hooks. So I had to take the side panels back to the sawhorses again and use a 45-degree chamfer bit to just take the sharp edge off. Right, I've chamfered the track. Let's hope it just runs smoothly. Before I just wasn't totally happy with it. Oh! Yes, perfect, I'll show you. Before, I think it would just bug me every time if I'm filing something in a rush and it would get jammed or something. I love it, that is exactly what I wanted. I'm going to finish the next one and then we're going to work on the base. So then it was just time to glue up. And remember, I'd marked which was the good side that would face in and out, just bear that in mind. And when I glued all of the side edges, I clamped them all together while getting it all square with a speed square. And I originally wanted to put it all together with a nail gun to make things quicker, but it ripped the edge of the plywood and I wasn't happy. So I took advice from Rob at Spend Time Save Money to pre-drill very fine holes and then hammer in with finishing nails. That was the easiest option. And the only time that I didn't do that, I got a blowout. So this was a much less stressful way to do it. Now, I just want to give a huge shout out to Ollie Allen, another fellow YouTuber who inspired me to make these boxes in the first place. I've seen his video last year and he used a CNC machine. Obviously, I don't have one of those, but the design in theory was simple. But I'll leave that video below if you want to check it out. And once I'd nailed those all together, I then measured the internal measurements. And after cutting the length down with a circular saw, I just used a jigsaw because I'm not going to be seeing it. And then I glued it, slotted it in, and then repeated the pre-drilling and hammering in. Now, I'm not going to show you the full extent of the smaller boxes. It was pretty much identical, apart from the sizes were smaller. But for the handle, I just used the one hole saw. It was much quicker and it would differentiate itself from the other boxes. But once all of them were glued and hammered together, I used a very chunky nail so I could hammer all my nails in further down and bury them before mixing some wood filler and filling it over all of them. And because I used a hardener in the wood filler, I could leave it half an hour before sanding everywhere with an Orbit sander. And then I just used some fine sandpaper to take away any sharp edges from all the handles and treated the whole lot with my usual Danish oil because I've got so much of it. But it's nearly gone now after all my recent projects. And then it was time to get rid of the old, really useful box, which never had a nice home, and transfer all of my files into my new one.
I love this.
So I think officially I've finished my living room. But if you do anything differently, as always, then feel free to comment below and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.